please rise for the passing of the colors and the singing of the national anthem by Tatiana McMartin.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated. On behalf of the university community, I want to welcome you to the 2013 Spring Graduate Commencement Exercises. We are pleased to have with us today representatives from the Virginia Tech Board of Visitors. Board members are appointed by the governor, and Virginia Tech has been very fortunate to have a record of appointees who bring to this voluntary service a deep and genuine commitment to the university. So I'm honored to recognize board members. First, Mr. Michael Quillen, Rector of the Board. If I'd ask them to please stand. Mr. George Nolan, Vice Rector. Dr. Nancy Dye, Mr. Cordell Falk, Mr. William Fairchild, Mr. John Rakovich, and Mr. Dennis Tracy. As well, there are 4 representatives to the board: Sarah Caparty, faculty representative Sue Teal, staff representative Robin Jones, our graduate student representative. Please recognize these individuals with your applause. Thank you. I'm also pleased to introduce the deans of our colleges. These are individuals who have immense responsibility for the academic and administrative direction of each college. And I'd like to ask them to stand as they call their names. Dr. Karen DePaul, who is the Vice President and Dean for Graduate Education. Dr. Rosemary Blisner, Associate Dean of the Graduate School. Dr. Janet Rankin, Associate Dean of the Graduate School, Dr. Alan Grant, Dean of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, Professor Jack Davis, Dean of the College of Architecture and Urban Studies, and Dr. Rich Sorensen, Dean of the Pamplin College of Business, Dr. John Lesko, Associate Dean of the College of Engineering, Professor Sue Ott Rollins, Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences, Dr. Paul Winnesdorfer, Dean of the College of Natural Resources and the Environment, Dr. Lena M. Chang, Dean of the College of Science, Dr. Gerhard Schurig, Dean of the Virginia Maryland Regional College of Veterinary Medicine, and Dr. Jill Sybil, Assistant Vice President and Dean for Undergraduate Education. So let's recognize these folks as well. I would also like to recognize the university's senior administrators who've joined the stage party today. First is Dr. Mark McNamee, the Senior Vice President and Provost. Dr. Elizabeth Flanagan, the Vice President for Development and University Relations. Dr. Guru Ghosh, the Vice President for International Affairs. Dr. William Lewis, Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion. Dr. Scott Midkiff, Vice President for Information Technology. Dr. Patricia Perillo, Vice President for Student Affairs. Mr. Dwight Shelton, Vice President for Finance and our Chief Financial Officer. Dr. Tom Tiller, Vice President for Alumni Relations. Dr. Robert Walters, Vice President for Research, and Dr. Sherwood Wilson, Vice President for Administration. Also on the stage are Dr. Bruce Pinchik, the Commencement Marshal, Ms. Anna Jaramillo, the Graduate Student Marshal, Mr. Jordan Booker, Graduate Honor System Chief Justice, Ms. Shamaya Abdallah, President of the Graduate Student Assembly, and Ms. Christy Benoit, the Graduate Student Speaker. So please recognize these individuals as well. Thank you. This morning, we are pleased to recognize and celebrate with our graduate students. We're here to honor them, and this ceremony signifies a tremendous achievement and a celebration of your talents and your skills and hard work. And we look forward with great anticipation to learning of your continued progress and your future accomplishments. And I'm sure that you're going to continue to display that Hokie spirit and always be a part of the very special Virginia Tech community. As you know, the degrees that you are about to receive are the highest that students may earn. It is also important to note that these students would not have achieved their goals without the teaching and the guidance of their faculty. So I'd now like to ask all the faculty to stand so we can recognize your contributions. So please. Thank you. You know, there are many faculty and staff members who've worked tirelessly to make this commencement a celebratory event. Many are serving as ushers and marshals today and have taken on additional administrative assignments to support this special occasion. I want to thank all of you. We also know that behind each graduate student is a supporting cast of family and community members. And I'd like the families of the graduate students to also stand so we can recognize you. Stand up. Thank you very much. You know, graduate students are extremely important to the university's research and scholarship mission. This university offers graduate degrees in 89 master's and 70 doctoral programs in 8 colleges. And its student body represents nearly 50 states and 120 nations from around the world. During the spring semester, 1,414 students earned advanced degrees, including 1,015 master's, 25 educational specialists, 4 doctorates in education, and 272 doctoral degrees, in addition to 98 advanced graduate certificates. We have approximately 670 graduating students participating with us today. So we're very proud of what you all have achieved. Now at this time, it's my pleasure to present Virginia Tech's Senior Vice President and Provost, Dr. Mark McNamee, who will introduce the graduate student speaker and today's commencement speaker. Dr. McNamee.
It's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Christy Benoit, our graduate student speaker. Christy is originally from Nova Scotia, Canada. She completed her undergraduate studies at Harvard University, and then she came to Virginia Tech, where she has earned both her master's and doctoral degrees in psychology. She's noted for both her exceptional clinical work and her innovative research. Her accomplishments have garnered her many honors and awards from leading professional organizations, including a national award in support of her dissertation studies. The College of Science named her as its most outstanding doctoral student in 2012. Christy is currently on an internship at Western Psychiatric Institute and Clinic at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, and she'll begin a research postdoctoral fellowship there next year. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Christy Benoit.
Thank you, Dean McNamee, for that very kind introduction. Good morning, faculty, staff, distinguished guests, family, friends, and fellow graduates. It is my great honor to be speaking to you today. As I was preparing this speech, I realized that I might have somewhat of a unique perspective on Virginia Tech. That's because I actually left Blacksburg about 9 months ago. In clinical psychology, we're required to complete a year-long clinical internship prior to graduation. So last August, I moved about 6 hours up the road to Pittsburgh. Leaving this community and subsequently preparing to return for graduation has brought back many fond memories, and also remembrances of things I actually don't miss all that much. Let me give you a few examples. Rushing to get to class and realizing just a little too late that once again, I'm trying to drive around the drill field at 9:50 a.m. In other words, the exact time when it seems like all 20,000 undergraduates are walking to their first class of the day. Or trying to park in the Prices Fork lot during the first week of classes, and after trolling for a spot for what seems like forever, I finally spot a car pulling out, promptly put on my signal, only to have another car zip on in there and steal it right out from under my nose. Uh-oh, I'm seeing a pattern here. Maybe I'm just a really angry driver. Let me try to give you some different examples. I don't miss the long nights running stats for a paper I'm working on with my mentor, only to meet with him and find out that he thinks I should start from scratch and analyze the data in a completely different way. Sorry, Tom. I don't miss the anxiety of preparing for a thesis, preliminary exam, or dissertation defense. I don't miss bombing a final paper or exam because I'm rapidly learning how extremely difficult it is to juggle classes, clinical work, research, and my GRA responsibilities. And I don't miss my family and friends, never really understanding what exactly it is that I do, and perpetually asking when I will finally finish school and enter the real world. Sorry, guys. And sorry to you all, that list was a little longer than I had anticipated. But have no fear. As you might imagine, not only are there many more things that I do miss about Virginia Tech, but the things I miss are far more important and far more meaningful. I miss finally making it to class, sometimes a little late, through the parking lot road rage and sea of undergraduate pedestrians, and being rewarded with a stimulating discussion about a research topic I'm truly interested in. I miss tubing on the New River, hiking the Cascades, graduate student wine socials, and the camaraderie of commiserating with lab mates over beers at the River Mill or margaritas at Cabo. I miss the many fruitful meetings with my mentor when I realized he was really onto something with that data analytic plan, or he challenged me to think about a construct in a new way, or we planned for a successful manuscript or grant submission. I miss the wonderful feeling of accomplishment after a successful defense, when the committee who had pushed me further than I thought I could go congratulated me on a job well done. I miss the feeling of mastery that came with realizing that despite my own overwhelming self-doubt, I actually could juggle all of the demands placed on a graduate student. And perhaps most of all, I will miss the outpouring of congratulations from my family back home in Canada who could not make it here today, and the immense pride I see written all over the faces of my family members who are here. So on behalf of all of today's graduates, thank you. Thank you to the fellow graduate students who supported us through some very trying years. Thank you to the faculty members who inspired our quest for knowledge. Thank you to the mentors who believed in us when we weren't quite sure of ourselves and encouraged our development into trusted colleagues. Thank you to the family and friends who were patient and understanding when we worked long hours and earned an income that barely paid the bills. And thank you to the Virginia Tech community for providing an idyllic and beautiful setting in which to embark on this crazy adventure of graduate school. Congratulations, fellow graduates. You've worked hard to earn that hood today. You've endured many frustrations, anxieties, self-doubts, stresses, and probably some failures. But in turn, you've earned the esteem of your mentors, the pride of your families, and what just may be the biggest accomplishment of your life. I hope that every future phase in life that challenges you in ways you never imagined also leaves you with wonderful memories you will never forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. I'm now pleased to introduce today's commencement speaker, Mr. Christoph Ebel, Counselor and Head of the Office of Science, Technology, and Higher Education at the Swiss Embassy in Washington, D.C. In this position, Mr. Ebel works to strengthen cooperation in science, technology, and higher education between Switzerland and the United States and Canada, and he promotes the exchange of ideas with scientists and science policy makers. Mr. Ebel has extensive experience in developing multicultural cooperation mechanisms in research with European Union institutions at a global level. He has served on the panel of the Innovation Strategy and the Economic Development Commission for Europe at the United Nations. Before that, he worked in Switzerland's Department of Economic Affairs, where he led the International Cooperation Section for Market-Oriented Research and Education with projects in Southeast Asia and China. Mr. Ebel received a master's degree from the University of Bern and also from the University of Illinois at Chicago, and he studied physics, art history, and literature in Switzerland. Please welcome Mr. Christoph Ebel.
Good to see you again.
Thank you for that kind introduction. Dear President Steger, dear Dean DePaul, dear professors, dear parents, dear friends, but today, most importantly, dear graduates, what an incredible day. What a heartfelt and deserved celebration. Ladies and gentlemen, it is such an honor to be here today, and I want to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to address each of you, the graduates, on this occasion, on this incredible milestone in your lives. It's truly humbling. I will bring to you today my perspective from overseas, from Switzerland. I'm a foreigner, if you will, but at the same time, someone who deeply cares about the United States, which has been my home for the past 4 years. It is a beautiful image that there is no true boundary between the United States and Europe, Switzerland, just an immense expanse, an ocean of promise and opportunity. Virginia Tech has taken leadership in crossing the ocean and the Alps and has established a foothold in the beautiful south of Switzerland, the canton of Ticino. The villa in Riva San Vitale has become a shining gem in transatlantic learning and exchange. As a matter of fact, in a few weeks, we will once again welcome a group of Virginia Tech and University of Basel students at the embassy in Washington, D.C. for their joint program's capstone conference. This is just one example where the Swiss-Virginia Tech cooperation facilitates the sharing of knowledge and experience. My government truly appreciates Virginia Tech's leadership and contributions. But I am not just a representative of the Swiss government. Today, in fact, I would like to speak to you as your friend. This is a technical school, so I want to give you some practical advice. I will speak about 3 living concepts, and you will discover that I speak about you, the graduates we celebrate today. Here they are: leadership, trust, and love. That's a strange trio, you may think, and you are right. But I promise to speak about you, and I know that these will be important for your professional and personal decision-making in the future. Let me start with leadership. You are now here today getting a degree from one of the foremost technical institutes in the United States and the world. You will have a hard time not finding yourself in a leadership position, like it or not. In fact, coming out into the world holding a degree from Virginia Tech, which attests to the knowledge and skills you earned in the countless hours of hard, dedicated work over the last years, puts you in a position where you will lead your generation. What makes a good leader? First, there is no shame in saying, "I don't know." So many times, leaders are afraid to admit that. But as you are already equipped with the skills to find the answers, you will build a network that can help you. The world evolves at a blinding pace. It is your principles and your skills at generating knowledge that puts you ahead of the game, not just your expertise in a given field. Chances are that you'll be working outside your exact field of study or research. I was fortunate to have mentors who taught me many principles of leadership. Among them are certain core values that I carry into practice every day, or at least try to do. First, use hierarchy as a support tool rather than a control tool. You're a leader because you have strong shoulders and because you're tough enough to protect your team and your vision. 2, demand superior results with this attitude. I expect a lot because I believe you can deliver a lot. 3, learn from those who you lead. Everything you know, you have learned from others. Accept guidance and serve a purpose. 4, Give individuals the opportunity to engage. Let them take credit for their successes and responsibility for their mistakes. And finally, appreciate creativity, embrace uncertainty. Believe in yourself and believe in a vision. Now, I hope that was useful, but really, none of this means anything if you don't have trust. Trust is a word we always use, but we're not really sure what it actually means. Trust implies an ability. One has the ability to trust. It is in fact not something you have or don't have. Trust requires courage. You take a leap of faith, leave your comfort zone, and open up to someone, allowing vulnerability. It is not being naive or blind. Knowledge and the capacity for learning is a prerequisite for trust. The ability to trust needs the ability to communicate and to interact. Trust must be built and learned with a vis-a-vis in a dialogue. You must be able to give signals that you will not hurt someone. The ability to create islands of certainty in an ocean of uncertainty, as Hannah Arendt would term it. It is the ability to promise a common path from the present to the future, and the act of keeping this promise. So trust becomes the basis for leadership. None of the above points on leadership are truly livable without the ability to trust in others and the moral posture that allows others to trust you. Trust resides outside a strictly reciprocal economy. It gives free credit. But what is the secret ingredient that lets us have the courage, the openness, the will, and the strength to keep our promises? If we were to distill trust, what would come out? It would be that ingredient giving us the ability to go beyond the tit for tat. Well, I suppose you guessed it. I think we call it love. Love exists outside the economy. It is exactly not about bean counting. In my experience as a coach for my coworkers and interns, I've seen that many approach their professional and personal lives as a series of essentially economic transactions. There's nothing wrong with that when you're negotiating your salary, you're buying your car, or having your house remodeled. However, as soon as we look at our interpersonal relations, the tit-for-tat thinking becomes toxic. I therefore encourage you to make love the overarching principle and approach to both your personal and professional life. Everything else will fall into place. You'll be able to trust, and people will trust you. It is the basis for exceptional leadership. If you love what you're doing, you will excel at it, and you will enjoy leading. Allow me to tell a short story to exemplify this. It is a story of an extraordinary young woman with whom I had the privilege of working. Her name is Sarah. She was an intern in my department. She went to a conference on the participation of women in the innovation system. She came back to me with a chart that said that Switzerland is trailing a lot of other countries in the participation of women in the innovation system. And she said, we have to do something about that. She was approached by someone from the National Academies of Science, and they asked her to present at a conference. She didn't want to do it, and I kind of forced her to go there. She hated me for an entire weekend because she had to prepare a speech, and she was recognized as a speaker. When she came back, she said, let's create an event, let's create a conference on this, and we really want to talk about this. I said, okay, I trust you to do this. It is your project, and I will do whatever it takes to make this happen. And I make sure that she got the budget. And 8 months later, she created an event at the museum in Washington, D.C. with an audience of 250 people and 4 US speakers and 4 Swiss speakers flown in from Switzerland. And it was the most successful conference I've ever organized. Sarah's dedication and leadership in creating the evening on Women in Innovation was the result of loving what she was doing. This has been inspirational beyond just that evening, and I'm proud to announce that one of our speakers, with the support of our group, has decided to go ahead and create an organization dedicated to stemming the gap in STEM. Hopefully, you will have an opportunity to hear from this organization soon and support it. Let me close by applying this principle to international cooperation. It too is based on the concepts I've been discussing. It requires visionary leadership to set the stage and the framework conditions for cooperation across borders and boundaries. Only trust can be the basis for long-term cooperation across the campus and across the Atlantic and literally the globe. And finally, it is our love of discovery, the love for our countries and the love for our planet that drives us to reach out to our partners and say with confidence, yes, we can make this a better world. Virginia Tech has given you the tools and has set the example with initiatives like the joint program led by Dean DePaul and President Steger's incredible leadership in globalizing Virginia Tech. Today, you, the graduates of this great university in this great state of a great nation, are handed your degrees and thus the responsibility to carry forward far into the 21st century the project of a more perfect humanity. I wish that you may accomplish this, and as you become leaders, you always remember that ultimately you have to trust to soar. And may you experience the grace of love to be the foundation of your agency. As a representative from a small country across the sea, I invite you to keep building together islands of certainty in an ocean of opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Christoph. I think your focus on leadership, trust, and love are very powerful messages, and I hope all of us will keep those in mind as we move ahead. So, it's now my great pleasure to invite Dean Karen DePaul to the podium.
Thank you, and good morning. We would now like to observe a special award ceremony, and to do so, I will ask Dr. Tom Tiller to come join me at the podium. The success of a university is often reflected in the accomplishments of its alumni. Together, the Graduate School and the Alumni Association have established the Graduate Alumni Achievement Award to recognize graduate alum who have achieved the highest goals in their field. I am pleased to announce that the 2013 recipient of the Graduate Alumni Achievement Award is Dr. Drew Gruel. Dr. Gruel, will you please come forward?
Dr. Gruel is Professor of Marketing at Babson College and holds its Toyota Chair in Commerce and Electronic Business. His career has been impressively prolific in multiple areas since receiving his doctorate in marketing in 1989 from Virginia Tech. Dr. Gruel also earned his master's degree earlier at Virginia Tech. He's authored more than 119 articles in top journals in his field, serves on editorial review boards, and co-authored a text on marketing research. He has received 7 Teaching Excellence Awards, as well as multiple awards for research over a 23-year period. The Academy of Marketing Science has named him a Distinguished Fellow and has conferred upon him 4 separate Lifetime Achievement Awards in different areas of marketing. Congratulations, Dr. Gruel.
Thank you, Dean DePaul and Dr. Tiller. It's wonderful to be back here after spending most of the 80s at this wonderful institution working on my graduate studies It's a great honor to be recognized for the fields of work that I actually started here as part of my dissertation. Everything that I achieved began through collegial and personal relationships started in Blacksburg, and I'm deeply grateful for all of these relationships. Most important, I met my wife, a fellow graduate student at Virginia Tech. The business school and the marketing department nurtured my ideas, which resulted in a lengthy dissertation, I think 500-600 pages, which my advisors were not at all happy to see. But I felt like everything I learned should be written down. Many of the people to whom I would like to share this award with are faculty who have retired, such as Kent Monroe, Jim Littlefield, Ed Fern, perhaps partly due to my fault and of constantly calling them and harassing them with projects and papers. But a few are still active, Hokies, Joe Sergi, and Julie Ozan. I would like to also acknowledge Ken Nakamoto and Joe Sergi for nominating me. It was very kind of them, and the support provided by Dean Sorensen. I have been fortunate to be awarded several honors in my career, and while I'm proud of every one of them, I can honestly say that I will treasure this one more than any other. It's really quite special to come back to your alma mater where you've spent probably, in hindsight, some of the best times and most relaxed times that you'll ever get. It looks like a lot of work, but in hindsight, the rest of life is a lot more work. So do enjoy your time here. In conclusion, I would like to congratulate all the graduates on their achievements and wish them well on their future endeavors. Thank you.
One of the greatest pleasures of being the graduate dean is to introduce the candidates for the graduate degrees and to talk about some of your accomplishments. Each and every student here today has a story to share about their experiences and their activities during graduate education. But we don't have time for all of the stories. But we do want to recognize and acknowledge many of you who have been very much a part of this very, very strong academic graduate community. Many of our graduate students qualify and receive highly competitive fellowships and scholarships. And this comes the interactive part. So please stand and remain standing if you have received a national or governmental fellowship. Yes, I know you're out there, so please stand. If you have received a foundation award or a scholarship, a Virginia Tech fellowship, or departmental or corporate scholarship, some of you just remain standing. I'd also like to acknowledge that our Alumni Award winner was a recipient of the Cunningham Award during his time as a graduate student. So those of you who are standing, please remain standing. And please stand and be recognized if you were selected as the outstanding master's student or doctoral student for your college or interdisciplinary unit, or if you have received a graduate teaching assistant excellent or graduate student service excellent award, the William Preston Society master's thesis, or any other award by your department or college. Please stand. Please stand and be recognized if you earned the distinction of being a citizen scholar, a graduate school citizen scholar. If you were inducted into the university's Graduate Academic and Leadership Honorary Society, AEL, or the Interdisciplinary Research Honor Society, Iota Delta Rho. Please stand if you have participated or will be participating in the Global Perspectives program. Please stand if you participated in the Graduate Student Assembly in any leadership role. If you were a delegate for your department, served on a university committee, participated in the Graduate Research Symposium, presented your work at a conference, or participated in the many events and workshops sponsored by the graduate school, your college, or the department. And finally, please stand if you have ever visited the nationally acclaimed Graduate Life Center, attended a workshop, symposium, or had a class in the Graduate Life Center, used the computer lab, student lounge, reading room, or lived in the graduate student residence hall, visited the graduate school in Blacksburg or the National Capital Region, used the walk-in service of the Writing Center, Counseling Center, Career Center, or relaxed at the outdoor plaza of the Graduate Life Center. By now, you should all be standing, which you are. Congratulations for your work, service, and accomplishment. And I want to acknowledge the tremendous amount of resources provided by the university that you have provided to building graduate community. Congratulations. And now you may be seated. We have to get a little activity in here. So, each year, we select graduates for special recognitions. And today, I want to recognize a group of graduate students. We often think of graduate students as focused entirely on graduate education, which they are, and they do, but most of you, I hope, all of you, have lives outside of graduate school. We don't often think of graduate students raising children and having babies. But today, I want to have everyone stand, all the graduates who are taking care of their family or raising children while you are in graduate school. And if you will allow me, please keep standing. If the children are in the audience, please stand or be projected. Thank you, and you may be seated. It is difficult, I think, to go through graduate school and raising a family, and I wanted to make sure that we acknowledge that part of the life of many of our graduate students. I also want to share that Virginia Tech was one of the first universities to offer a program to assist pregnant graduate students on assistantship. In collaboration with the NSF Advanced Grant, the graduate school developed a work-life grant program in 2004. Through this program, financial assistance is provided by the graduate school, the provost office, and the colleges. A total of 63 grants have been provided since 2004. 15 of them this year, which is amazing and wonderful. One more time, if you have been a recipient of the Work-Life Grant, would you please stand so we can congratulate you and your family. All right. Thank you. Many of the friends and families of today's graduates have sacrificed time and resources to help their loved ones attain the hard-won goal of a graduate degree. I would now like to share with you a few images of this past year that reflect some of the diversity, vitality, and the experiences of our graduate students. I hope you will take a few minutes here to enjoy the visual presentation that will be up on the screen, which is accompanied by an original composition by Virginia Tech Professor James Sojensky. And this is commissioned by the graduate school and played in honor of the graduates by the Virginia Tech Brass Ensemble. Its title is Paraphrasing Invent the Future.
now begin the conferral of degrees. The presentation of the doctoral degree is accompanied by a special tradition in academia. The doctoral degree recipients will be hooded by their major professors. The faculty member who accompanies the student to the stage is a member of the student's research committee and in most cases is the student's major doctoral advisor. That faculty member who mentored the student and most closely supervised his or her research. By hooding the graduate today, the faculty member symbolically welcomes the graduate as a professional colleague, a professional relationship and friendship that often continues throughout the graduates' and the mentors' lives.
Will all the candidates for the Doctor of Philosophy and Doctor of Education degrees please rise? President Steger, I have the honor to present the candidates for the Doctor of Philosophy and Doctor of Education degrees.
With the power vested in me by the Board of Visitors in the Commonwealth of Virginia and upon the recommendation of the faculty, I confer upon you the Doctor of Philosophy and Doctor of Education degrees to which you are entitled with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto.
You may be seated. Will the marshals please escort the candidates for the doctoral degrees and their major professors to the stage for the hooding ceremony? Professor Joe Marola will be reading the names of the doctoral recipients and the hooding professors.
Receiving the Doctor of Philosophy from the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences in Agriculture and Extension Education, Kiana Jamir Ellis, hooded by Professor Eric Kaufman. In Animal and Poultry Sciences, Chastity Marie Cox, hooded by Professor Rami Dalul. Diego Moreira Paiva, hooded by Professor Audrey McLeroy. In biochemistry, Titilola Denloya, hooded by Professor Michael Kemba. In crop and soil environmental sciences, Catherine Stephanie Fleming, hooded by Professor Mark Reiter. Jinling Li, hooded by Professor Greg Ivanilo. In entomology, Legia Maria Marquez Cota Vieira, hooded by Professor Scott Salmon and Professor Loki Koch. Chow Wee Woo, hooded by Professor Loki Koch. In horticulture, Norma Costanza Manrica Carpintero, hooded by Professor Richard Vallieu. In human nutrition, foods, and exercises, Casey Allen, hooded by Professor Paul Estabrooks and Professor Jaime Zellner. Erin Mabry, hooded by Professor Kathy Hosig. Aaron M. Smith, hooded by Professor Paul Estabrooks. In plant pathology, physiology, and weed science, Lynn Esther Espada Rayos, hooded by Professor Antoine Baudouin. From the College of Architecture and Urban Studies, in Architecture and Design Research, Shamsul Abu Bakr, hooded by Professor Patrick Miller. Ana Maria Jaramillo, hooded by Professor Patrick Miller. In environmental design and planning, Kathleen M. Short, hooded by Professor Christine Fiore. In planning, governance, and globalization, Wafa Mohsen Saleh Adali, hooded by Professor Max Stevenson and Professor Kathleen Parrott. Nicole Paulette Sanderlin, hooded by Professor Max Stevenson. In public administration and public affairs, Jae Kwan Ko, hooded by Professor Brian Cook. From the Pamplin College of Business, in business accounting, Michael Edward Oslansky, hooded by Professor Bowie Hansen. Jonathan Stanley Pizoa, hooded by Professor Greg Jenkins. In business finance, Nikolaus Artavanis, hooded by Professor Gregory Kadlec. In business marketing, Derek Francis Davis, hooded by Professor Paul Hare. In hospitality and tourism management, Reishwa Du, hooded by Professor Vincent Magnini. San Tak Lee, hooded by Professor Ken McCleary. Yu Mi Lim, hooded by Professor Pamela Weaver. Yan Ju Wu, hooded by Professor Muzaffar Wisal. From the College of Engineering, in Aerospace Engineering, Yu Le, hooded by Professor Andrew Cordela. Christian R. Sonnenberg, hooded by Professor Craig Woolsey. Ji Ya Zhang, hooded by Professor Michael Phelan. In Biological Systems Engineering, Isaac A. Alukwi, hooded by Professor Theo Dillaha and Professor Mary Leigh Wolf. Zhang Zhang Hu, hooded by Professor Chen Ming Zhang. Su Wan Myung, hooded by Professor Yi Hung Zhang. Michael Quinn Nasri, hooded by Professor Theo Dillaha. Namanda Serra Senyando, hooded by Professor Arago Ogejo. In Biomedical Engineering, Christopher Brian Arena, hooded by Professor Rafael Davalos. Kara F. Buchanan, hooded by Professor Nicole Rylander. Allison Louise Daniello, hooded by Professor Clay Gabler. Bradford Hendershot, hooded by Professor Maury Nussbaum. Robert Evans Neal II, hooded by Professor Rafael Davalos. Michael Benjamin Sano, hooded by Professor Rafael Davalos. Samuel Klein Shimp III, hooded by Professor Nicole Rylander and Professor Christopher Riley. Christopher Sang Zot, hooded by Professor Nicole Rylander. In Chemical Engineering, Phoon Phuc Nam Bui, hooded by Professor Donald Baird. Saeed Makmoor Mazahir, hooded by Professor Donald Baird. Satyavrata Samawedi, hooded by Professor Abby Whittington and Aaron Goldstein. Anil Kumar Surapati, hooded by Professor Stephen Martin. In Civil Engineering, Sharif Lotfi Adel Motalib Abdulaziz, hooded by Professor Guna Olgan and Professor James Martin. Ozgur Atlayan, hooded by Professor Finley Charney. Leon F. Gay Alanis, hooded by Professor Sunil Sinha and Professor Annie Pierce. Bernard Leonard Kastner, hooded by Professor Karen Roberts Woolman. Michael Anthony Mobile, hooded by Professor Mark Widowson. Marina Hilar Cuadros, hooded by Professor Lindsay Marr. Allison Marie St. Clair, hooded by Professor Sunil Sinha. Ja Tong, hooded by Professor Daniel Gallagher. Hong Wang, hooded by Professor Amy Pruden. In computer engineering, Mohammed Mahmoud Azab, hooded by Professor Jonas Basieras. Tanus Frangye, hooded by Professor Peter Athanas. Abranil Maiti, hooded by Professor Patrick Chaumont. William O. Plymale, hooded by Professor Scott Midkiff. In computer science and applications, Tae Hyuk An, hooded by Professor Adrian Sandhu. Hussein Al-Mori, hooded by Professor Eli Tilovich. Ji-Sun Kim, hooded by Professor Dennis Glachinen and Professor Francis Queck. Xiao Mo Yu, hooded by Professor Alan Wong. Creston Allen Miller, hooded by Professor Francis Queck. Henry Matthew Monty, hooded by Professor Ali Boot. Chow Peng, hooded by Professor Yong Cao. Hari Krishna Paila, hooded by Professor Calvin Ribbons and Professor Srinidhi Varadarajan. Harmanpreet Singh, hooded by Professor Dennis Grachinen. Myung-Kyu Song, hooded by Professor Dennis Grachinen. Or excuse me, hooded by Professor Eli Tilovich. Shai Wen Song, hooded by Professor Kirk Cameron. In electrical engineering, Reza Arganda Junagani, hooded by Professor Robert Broadwater. Bum Suk Choi, hooded by Professor Ricardo Bardiso. Ali Reza Mahmoudian, hooded by Professor Wayne Scales. Ming Kai Mu, hooded by Professor Dusan Bororevich. Ryan David Quint, hooded by Professor James Thorpe and Professor Virgilio Centeno. Parish Elaine Ralston, hooded by Professor Sanjay Raman. Ji-Yu Shen, hooded by Professor Dusan Boroyevich. Santosh Sambamurti Veda, hooded by Professor Virgilio Centeno. Benjamin Alexander Weston, hooded by Professor Gary Brown. Alexander Rian Young, hooded by Professor Charles Boston. In engineering education, Cheryl Ann Carrico, hooded by Professor Holly Matusevich. Stephanie Leigh Cutler, hooded by Professor Maura Borrego. Parhum Delgashai, hooded by Professor Vinod Lohani. In engineering mechanics, Arash Barami, hooded by Professor Mohammed Haj. Ali Reza Chadagani, hooded by Professor Romesh Batra. Jessica Ann DeBelka, hooded by Professor Scott Case. Mohammed Majarul Islam, hooded by Professor Rakash Kapanya. Tong Chin, hooded by Professor Saad Ragab and Professor Peng Tao Yua. Masood Safdari, hooded by Professor Marwan Al-Haq. Alireza Samahazada Dozdabi, hooded by Professor Rafael Davalos and Professor Mark Stremler. In Industrial and Systems Engineering, J. Evan Klasing, hooded by Professor John Casali. Bo Chen Jia, hooded by Professor Mauri Nussbaum. Ka Yoon Kim, hooded by Professor Brian Kleiner and Professor Elizabeth McNair. Shreya Kotaneth, hooded by Professor Tanya Smith-Jackson. Lance Walter Saunders, hooded by Professor Brian Kleiner. Anna Christine Shu, hooded by Professor Jaime Camillo. Shenji Shah, hooded by Professor Hanif Shirali. John Benson York, Jr., hooded by Professor Ji-Sheng Lai. In Materials Science and Engineering, Deepam Maurya, hooded by Professor Shashank Priya. Chun Xian Wu, hooded by Professor William Reynolds, Jr. In Mechanical Engineering, Mana Afsari, hooded by Professor Daniel Inman. Hussein Abdurrahman Ahmad, hooded by Professor Mehdi Ahmadian. Abdusalam Al-Khwaji, hooded by Professor Tom Diller. Naresh Kumar Coimbatore Selvanrasu, hooded by Professor Danish Tafti. Kiyor Banu Prasad Joshi, hooded by Professor Shoshank Priya. Hao Xiang Yao, hooded by Professor Scott Huxtable. Anthony Christopher Marin, hooded by Shoshank Priya. Clement Michel Jean Nagod, hooded by Professor Mehdi Ahmadian. Ping Ren, hooded by Professor Dennis Hong. Debamoy Sen, hooded by Professor Mark Pearson. John Whitney, hooded by Professor Nicole Rylander. Song Shui, hooded by Professor Wing Eng and Srinath Ekad. In mining engineering, Zulfikar Ali, hooded by Professor Gerald Luttrell. Zhuo Li Li, hooded by Professor Ro Han Yoon. Stephen J. Shafrick, hooded by Professor Cray Luxbacher. Guang Shu, hooded by Professor Cray Luxbacher. From the College of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences in Apparel, Housing, and Resource Management, Chung Wen Shu, hooded by Professor Irene Leach. Hyunju Kwan, hooded by Professor Julia Beamish. In career and technical education, Evans Lampy, hooded by Professor William Price. Luca Ngoyi, hooded by Professor William Price. In curriculum and instruction, Naina Arvind Bandari, hooded by Professor Thomas Williams, Jr. Mark Aaron Bond, hooded by Professor Barbara Lockie. Jondell Luann Fernelier, hooded by Professor Carrie Redican. Amber Diane Marcoux, hooded by Professor Catherine Sanamo. Brian Isles Mosley, hooded by Professor Barbara Lockie. Kelly Laurel Schur, hooded by Professor Mark Stremler. Bridget Condon Scott, hooded by Professor Katie Dredger and Professor Jim Garrison. In educational leadership and policy studies, Tara Elizabeth Frank, hooded by Professor Joan Hurt and Professor Stephen Janosic. Joanne Harris Lucas, hooded by Professor Wayne Tripp. Minnie Ruth Outlaw, hooded by Professor Carol Cash. Sharon A. Phillips, hooded by Professor Carol Cash. In educational research and evaluation, Timothy Burrows, hooded by Professor Elizabeth Kramer. In human development, Laura Elizabeth Eubanks Gambrell, hooded by Professor Fred Piercy. Melissa Mayberry Lubin, hooded by Professor John Dooley. Bradford Royhill Wiles, hooded by Professor Victoria Fu. In Rhetoric and Writing, Ashley S. Patriarca, hooded by Professor Carols Avia. In Social, Political, Ethical, and Cultural Thought, Luciana H. Karabkosyan, hooded by Professor Max Stevenson. And from the College of Natural Resources, in Geospatial and Environmental Analysis, Bao Juan Zheng, hooded by Professor James Campbell. From the College of Science, in Biological Sciences, Robert M. Nortington, hooded by Professor Jack Webster. In Chemistry, Timothy J. Fuhrer, hooded by Professor Harry Dorn. Sneha S. Kelkar, hooded by Professor Richard Turner. Jessica Deanne Knoll, hooded by Professor Karen Brewer. Leslie S. Owens, hooded by Professor Gary Long. Shraddha Vasant Patil, hooded by Professor James Tanko. Niraj Narendra Patwardhan, hooded by Professor Paul Carlier. Metun Rajendra Raja, hooded by Professor Webster Santos. Travis Azor White, hooded by Professor Karen Brewer. In Geosciences, Sharmeen Shamsal-Sadati, hooded by Professor Chester Weiss. In Mathematics, Casey Geraldine Farlow, hooded by Professor Martin Day. Vitor Manuel Leite dos Santos Núñez, hooded by Professor Jeff Borgard. Xu Zhang, hooded by Professor Tao Lin. In Physics, Nasreen Afzal, hooded by Professor Michelle Pleimling. Mitun Bomik, hooded by Professor Giti Kodaparast. Zachary Evan Lewis, hooded by Professor Tatsu Takeuchi. Justin David Yonker, hooded by Professor Scott Bailey. In psychology, Christy E. Benoit, hooded by Professor Thomas Olenek. From the Virginia-Maryland Regional College of Veterinary Medicine, in biomedical and veterinary sciences, Dina Khan, hooded by Professor Ansar Ahmed. Interdisciplinary doctoral degrees in genetics, bioinformatics, and computational biology, Shamira Shalom, hooded by Professor Skip Garner. In macromolecular science and engineering, Catherine A. Finley, hooded by Professor David Dillard and Professor Robert Moore. From the College of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences, receiving the Doctor of Education in Educational Leadership and Policy Studies, Tony Leigh Pardue Childress, hooded by Professor Carol Cash. Paula Johnson, hooded by Professor Carol Cash. Herbert Thomas Monroe, hooded by Professor Jim Craig. And from the College of Science, receiving the Doctor of Philosophy in Psychology, Ryan Christopher Smith, hooded by Professor Karen DePaul.
Congratulations to all of the newest recipients of the doctoral degree. Before we announce the master's candidates, I would like to acknowledge those students who have earned a postmaster's education specialist degree and those who have earned a graduate certificate. So please stand if you have earned the education specialist degree or a graduate certificate. Congratulations, you may be seated. We will now recognize the students who have earned a master's degree from among the 89 different master's programs that we offer at Virginia Tech. Will all the candidates for the master's degree please rise? As noted, Virginia Tech offers 89 master's degree programs. These include the Master of Arts and the Master of Science in many academic disciplines, the Master of Fine Arts, the Master of Business Administration, and professional master's degrees in the disciplines such as architecture, education, engineering, forestry, information technology, natural resources, public affairs, and urban planning, and public health. And now we will recognize the students. You're already standing, okay. President Steger, I have the honor to present the candidates for the master's degrees.
With the power vested in me by the Board of Visitors and the Commonwealth of Virginia, and upon the recommendation of the faculty, I confer upon you the master's degrees to which you are entitled, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto.
Please be seated. The marshals will now escort the candidates for the master's degree to the stage, and Professor Marola will read the names of the master's degree candidates. Recipients.
Educational Specialist in Educational Leadership and Policy Studies, Valerie Angle. Kimberly Sink. Amy Strickland. Allison Taylor. From the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, receiving the Master of Science in Agriculture and Applied Economics, Jessica Boatwright. Vanessa Carrion Yaguana. Alyssa Coltis. Catherine Dubril. Darren Enterline. Receiving the Master of Science in Agriculture and Extension Education, Kelsey Brunton. Receiving the Master of Science in Agriculture and Life Sciences, Ryan Docherty. Heather Selig. In Animal and Poultry Sciences, Kaylee Kohlhaas. Padma Rangarajan. In Crop, Soil, and Environmental Sciences, Karen Strechko. Nathaniel Reams. Aaron Bradner. Amber Hickman. John Parker. Justin Jones. Christy Edwards. Devin Ripner. In Dairy Science, Eric Ronk. Brittany Willing. Receiving the Masters of Life Sciences in Food Science and Technology, Jesse Waite. Hassan Masri. The Masters of Science in Horticulture, Maz Crescenti, Johanna Crescenti. In Human Nutrition, Foods, and Exercise, Nicole Olive. Lauren Noel. Adrienne Clark. Felicia Reese. From the College of Architecture and Urban Studies, receiving the Master of Architecture, Ryan DeSalvatore. Milton Salcido. Amber Answine. Catherine Lanny. Stephen Hershey. Negar Gassemia. Roxana de Jesus Fresa. Mohammed Al-Fadil. Ian Gaines. Jinwoo Chu. Receiving the Master of Science in Building Construction, Pedram Hatami. Receiving the Master of Landscape Architecture, J. Gardner Burt. Fatima Saeed Rizi. Anna McBean. Ken Mark McBean. Receiving the Master of Public Administration, Christopher Hubbard. Shiloh Paulinino. Amy Stucker Pearson. Gregory Brown. Receiving the Master of Public and International Affairs, Liari Branch. Receiving the Master of Urban and Regional Planning, Paul Marcella. Christopher Price. Renee Michelle Losapio. Receiving the Master of Arts in Public and International Affairs, Saul Naji. Ching Ling Chen. Jiao Zhuan Peng. Yuan Zhang. Ya Jan. Receiving the Master of Fine Arts in Creative Technologies, Ryan Musselman. Megan Walker. From the Pamplin College of Business, receiving the Master of Accounting and Information Systems, Caroline Bollinger. Christy Keck. Laura Beal. Cassandra Mendoza. Travis Coiner. Lindsay Slaughter. Sarah Herford. Aaron Swieger. Rayan Buckra. Jeffrey Verga. Eric Clark. Carolyn Cross. Patrick Stoltzfus. Nagar Jamshidi Mayer. Ryan Jane. Derek Castles. Shu Chin Zhang. Shan Wei. Mu Yao Shen. Chantel Holloman. Jessica Talent. Nasser Mikdadi. Steve Wernicki. Madison Combs. Jonathan Bailey. Ryan Urell. Justin Nance. Yu Yi Zhang. Hijab Nida Chowdhury. Loretta Lovejoy. Kyle Downey. Stuart Johnson. Jonathan Woody. Stephanie Tang. Casey Hoffman. Peter O. Receiving the Master of Business Administration, Nain Sun. Wei Zhang. Chen Song, Wan Chen Xiong, Li Ling Liang, David Steger, Sarah Horsey, Stephen Filmer, Miles Ross, Robert Leeper, Holly Cuneo, Matthew Dolan, Alex Osama, Andrew Allwine, Artur Lominski, Christopher Burton, Joseph Arcella, Sam Berry, Imran Mehdi, Guillaume Fadul, Kunal Muratai, Bhavna Hasrati, Sridevi Kara, Ankita Singh, David Stanton III, Noah Schoenholtz, Mark Larson, Jennifer Wicker, receiving the Master of Science in Hospitality and Tourism Management, Lance Malum, Joshua Bernheimer, Elaine Mathis, Yu Ying Zhang, receiving the Master of Science in Marketing, Isabella Valini. From the College of Engineering, receiving the Master of Science in Aerospace Engineering, Alexander Kara. Michael Dolan, Charles Egger, Adam Ensminger, Ankit Ganirawal, Mark Pelferman, Jeffrey Garnand, Brandon Hall, Thomas Kasmer, Ryan Montereau, David Owens, receiving the Master of Science in Biological Systems Engineering, Caitlin Ripner, Betsy Clownan, Ambika M.V. Murthy, Elizabeth Collins, Tamura Smith, receiving the Master of Science in Biomedical Engineering, Danielle Berenger, Elizabeth Elvington, Victor Stewart, receiving the Master of Science in Civil Engineering, James Reynolds, Paul Zhang, Jonathan Eberly, Stephen Van Nostel, Kevin Oswegan, Samantha Mingrone, Gregory Holbrook, Natalia Igorova, Gallo Bowen, Gregory Cole, Matthew DeFazio, Frank Smith, Miguel Robles Lara, Armin Adecristi, Samantha Dorell, Juan Santos Sang, Alba Taveras, Savan Sagar Shah, Luis de Leon, Charles Watkins, Bradley Tollner, Allison Lawyon, Eric Jonigmeyer, Edward Chang, Thomas Holt, Daniel Kazinas, Mariam Motamed, Michael Bayard, Hans Stadem, George Bowers, Andrew Kost, Benjamin Giho, Noah Jolly, Aaron Littleton, Dakhyo Ma, Marcus Aguilar, David Asinera, Nashita Noreen, Abhinav Gupta, Saloni Romesh Kirania, Asmita Ananta Garat. Receiving the Master of Science and the Master of Engineering in Computer Engineering, Kevin Zhang. Xiao Chi Chin. Madison Blake. John Christie. Abhijit Bondre. Muthu Salvan Sundarajan. Receiving the Master of Science in Computer Science and Applications, Travis Bale. Daniel Tilden. Lauren Bradel. Daniel Breakiron. Kyle Shutt. Kiran Chituri, Ankit Ahuja, Nabil Mermohidin Mohammed, Rajesh Subeya, Hemant Makapati, receiving the Master of Science and Master of Engineering in Electrical Engineering, Hema Reddy. Christopher Mertz, Tanmay Potnis, Niraj Pramad Kumar, Shane Seaman, Ryan Taylor, Charles Russell, Alan O'Donnell, Zachary Biscaduras, David Gillum, Scott Jung, Jeff Nguyen, receiving the Master of Science in Engineering Mechanics, Randall Goodnight, receiving the Master of Science in Environmental Engineering, Robert Wilcox, Natalie Driscoll, Mark Mazaket, Kwong Ju, Ross Varen, receiving the Master of Science in Environmental Sciences and Engineering, Richard Brown, receiving the Master of Science in Material Science and Engineering, Hesham El Makarm, Navar Bartz, receiving the Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering, Brian Keller, Andrea Shen, William French, Mark Umansky, Ray Cawthon, Elizabeth Armstrong, Morgan Mitchell, Sean Meehan, Thomas Gorman, Jacob Lambeth, Jordan Thompson, Ravi Kishore, Michael Stevens, Michael Oken, Scott Hopkins, Zhui Yi Hu, Fan Meng, Gerald Gebhardt, Shreyas Srinivasan, Vivek Kumar, receiving the Master of Science in Industrial Systems Engineering, Stephanie Alpert, Joseph Angles, Naziba Azadafard, Sunkate Banaj, Dominic Breuer, Pablo Cardenas Orlandinai, Gurjot Dilong, Tatiana Jameson, Peter Lewis, Nevin Mutlu, Corey Nizilik, Nikhil Pawar, Arvind Chandar Rathinam, Yi Zhang, receiving the Master of Science in Mining Engineering, Josh Morris, receiving the Master of Science in Ocean Engineering, Skylar Stevens, Parker Field, receiving the Master of Science in Systems Engineering, Mark Rogers. From the College of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences, receiving the Master of Arts in Communication, Kimberly Sokolik. Receiving the Master of Science in Education in Career and Technical Education, Katie Bacher. Jordan Fisher. Ann Howell. Michael McGinsky. Morgan Paulette. Angie Rogers. Emmy Elizabeth Scott. Caitlin Seski. Michelle Sprinkle. Kelsey Tregg. Melissa Watson. Austin Whitehorn. Receiving the Master of Arts in Education in Counselor Education, Tony Oswegan. Caitlin Carwick. Valerie Nelson. Katrina Ross. Lynn Haramis. Jillian McKay. Bethany Lackey. Megan Reeve. Kimberly Cundiff. Amy Dove. Lauren McGill. Amanda Toomey. Madeline Lukanich. Receiving the Master of Arts in Education in Curriculum and Instruction, Hap Brecht. Michael Mosley. Benjamin Bishop. Hunter Davis. Andrew Mines. Stephanie Newhall. Sarah Haynes. Grace Cardwell. Laura McBride. Matthew Majors. Kelly Vaith. Tatiana McMartin. Lee Seidner. Kelsey Lund. Molly Overson. Brendan Harrigan. Ashley Maupin. Paige Russell. Emily Bassing. Alice Mauney. Dana Cohn. Marcella Howard. Rachel Pignard. Chad Atherton. Brian Baldwin. Andrew Pruitt. Rachel Castengay. Brittany Dickens. Joshua Thompson. Jody McKinney. Lauren Dalton. Amanda Meehan. Caleb Gard. Kelly Eckhart. Lauren Bates. Lexi Feldman. Claire Nolan. Kyla Little. Sarah Vaughn. Ashley Underwood. Elise Feistemel. Brooke Feistemel. Taylor Blankenship. Carrie Lillard. Martha Clements. Caitlin Keogh. Elizabeth Struble. Shay Kaler. Shannon Stombach. Amanda Atkinson. Anna Parker. Sarah Parker. Kayla Wooten. Whitney Davis. Christopher Piazza. Nancy Swanson. Rebecca Hoover. Robin Abernathy. Scott Burton. Aaron Chafe. Leah Colley. Sean Lewis. Leah Munster. Louis Nickus. Andrew Nicholas. Catherine Wallace. Megan Willard. Qinghua Zhang. Emily Akin. Chris Martin. Nick Merrill. Kara Moser. Rebecca Zempel. Sam Rosenkrantz. Holly Hogan. Sharon Elizabeth Newbern. Laura Sagadin. Kevin Sutton. Receiving the Master of Arts in Education in Educational Leadership and Policy Studies, Dakota Farquhar Cadell. Jeremy Harmon. Caitlin Heenahan. Patrick Jones. Robin Jones. Jordan King. Brittany Moffett. David McCoy. Alyssa Stowe. Catherine Russo. Diana Wilson. Sue Volkmar. William Mintz. Albert Banton. Michelle Ert. Bradley Jenkins. Dana Kelly Stevens. Abdulaziz Alanizi. Mary Mackenzie Greer. Brittany Ball. Lee Ann Bray. Karen Harden. Norris Evans. Robbie Garnes. Kevin Law. Catherine Linneberg. Laveda Muncy. Receiving the Master of Arts in Foreign Languages, Cultures, and Literatures, Daniel Bowman. Kimberly Shuday. Kayla Watson. Receiving the Master of Arts in Philosophy, Eric Diadosho. Christopher Stiso. Receiving the Master of Arts in Political Science, Andrew Beal. Jeffrey Engel, Daniel Helms, Chelsea Hickey, Allison Higgins. Receiving the Master of Information Technology, Eric Knopf. Ivan Ranafarji Rivasplata. Syed Ovais Yunus. From the College of Natural Resources and Environment, receiving the Master of Science and Master of Forestry in Forestry, Elizabeth Moore. Taylor Chakurda. Brett Heim. Mara Leveros. Cody Gillen. Trevor Seville. Melissa Shockey. Receiving the Master of Science in Geography, Mary Harmon. Bridget Rivers. Jennifer Porter. Charles Staton. Arja Zhao. Sarah Damon Sukep. Receiving the Master of Natural Resources, Stephen Mattingly. Jill Knoll. William Lavender. Justin Morris. From the College of Science, receiving the Master of Science in Biological Sciences, Jenny Wyderko. Receiving the Master of Science in Mathematics, Caleb Magruder. Drayton Munster. Marissa Renardi. Receiving the Master of Science in Statistics, Hao Lu. Yi Chiang. From the Virginia Maryland Regional College of Veterinary Medicine, Master of Science in Biomedical and Veterinary Sciences, Michelle Walker. Receiving the Master of Public Health, Yvette Valenzuela. Autumn Timpano. Christopher Pelosi. Carla Gutierrez Tyler. Jose Jimenez. Piros Talionis. Tyler Litch. Caitlin Link. From interdisciplinary programs, receiving the Master of Information Technology, Lacey Anderson. Daniel Truxler. Carolyn Bowman. Leonard Vaughn. Victoria Doheny. Matthew Little. Al Cooper. Michael Flora. Markia Williams. Smriti Sinha. Jorge Marin.
Okay. Congratulations to all master's and doctoral recipients.
Now I would like to call upon Dr. Sarah Carpenter, President of the Faculty Senate, to bring a brief message from the faculty. Dr. Carpenter.
On behalf of the Virginia Tech faculty, I would like to first congratulate you for the graduate degrees that you have worked so hard to earn. As many before me, I turn to Dr. Seuss to deliver a few brief remarks. I recently discovered a relatively new PBS Kids show with my two sons. The show is called The Cat in the Hat Knows a Lot About That. Well, I know that that show, unfortunately, was probably not part of your graduate curriculum, but I think that it offers advice that's valuable and applicable to those from ages 5 to 105. Today, you should celebrate your accomplishments because, like the cat in the hat, you know a lot about that being your field of specialization. However, the message in the cartoon that I think is quite wise is a very simple one of how we must challenge ourselves to learn every day. You see, each episode, the Cat in the Hat's 6-year-old neighbors ask him a question which he does not know the answer for. Now, any of you with kids or nieces or nephews or the like know that that happens quite frequently. When challenged with that question, the Cat in the Hat doesn't just say, "because," and walk away. Rather, he gathers together his young neighbors and his trusty friends, the fish, Thing 1 and Thing 2, and he sets off on adventures to find the answers in his thingamajigger. Now, this thingamajigger is a contraption that flies, drives, sails, and changes shapes. A contraption that would amaze even the best engineers among you. As the Cat in the Hat searches for answers, the entire crew of this thingamajigger must not only use the knowledge that they already have, but they must also be willing to learn new things, to have new adventures, and to explore ideas and worlds that they did not know existed. We ask you now, as your faculty colleagues, to embrace the wisdom of the Cat in the Hat. Don't just assume that a contraption, such as the thingamajigger, is impossible. If you don't dream it, if you don't test new theories, if you don't explore new worlds, who will? As part of a very small percent of the population to hold a graduate degree, you have a unique responsibility to use your talents and to explore new knowledge. Take a message, though, from the Cat in the Hat. Take your neighbors, your kids, your friends, and your colleagues on this journey with you. The problems we face now in the future will likely not be conquered alone. In the end, we ask you to surround yourself with people and immerse yourself in adventures that will lead you to question the very knowledge that you have mastered and will encourage you to invent new realities. We wish you the best, and on behalf of the faculty, congratulations.
Thank you, Sarah. I want to offer a special thanks to Dr. Joseph Marola as the reader of the names. And also to Tatiana McMartin and the members of the Virginia Tech Brass Ensemble for their part in this morning's ceremony. Now I'd like to ask you to stand as the stage party recesses, and with the recessional, our ceremony will be concluded. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a safe trip home.